Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome to today's video. This is a refresh of Appley Ever After, a previously created garden slash generic lot that was based on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but specifically the scene where she is in the glass coffin at the end of the film. I wanted to memorialize that and create like this apple garden that had a historic landmark right in the center to pay homage to where she formerly was. Something that might have organically happened if this was made in some kind of like a modern society where big historical moments happen and then in retrospect they get turned into monumental areas. But for her and for Snow White, it would just make so much sense to do this beautiful apple garden with lots of flowers and trees and butterflies and little animals running all around. And I loved this garden. It was created back for Hemford on Bagley, and I knew that I was going to be keeping it and just moving it over here to Ravenwood. We are currently kind of like right across the street from the Snow White cottage, so we're all in the same neighborhood here. And my main goals with refreshing the lot this time around is that number one, I wanted to change this to a cemetery. I have done a few cemeteries in the Disney save so far, but I've done a lot of traditional ones. I have my New Orleans traditional cemetery with the above ground tombs, and then I also have a very dark Gothic, villainy, haunted mansion themed cemetery over in Forgotten Hollow. But this is our Ravenwood world. This is the world that introduced cemeteries. So since this lot was a generic, and the problem with doing generic lot typing is that unfortunately Sims don't really spawn here. It's not very lively or active. And so all this like beautiful garden areas and picnicking areas and visual scenery that you could sit and enjoy the ambience of, you're not really going to get random Sims that generate here. And that is such a shame. So it does make sense, both for the reason of it being in the Ravenwood world and also because this is quite literally where Snow White was laid to rest, to turn this into a cemetery. But rather than doing the traditional cemeteries that I've done in the past, this one is a much more light, airy, princessy garden sort of cemetery. A garden more so than a cemetery, I would say. I have some obvious things that I have to include because I'm converting it into a cemetery. So I have to put headstones, I have to put some of those like memorializing objects onto the lot. But other than that, it really doesn't require anything. Like, you don't really have to have anything else other than a bathroom. So if you pop in the little outhouse stall that we got from one of the Sims events, then the lot suddenly becomes a functional cemetery. And I really like the idea that people that maybe just didn't want their ancestors in a rows and rows, lines and lines of just headstones cemetery type of vibe, which is perfectly fine and amazing in its own regard. But maybe somebody wanted something a little bit more gardeny, fairy-esque, in touch with nature, or maybe these are like important people. Maybe this is a royal cemetery of some kind. I did kind of joke when I was building it to my husband that I have two headstones that I put over in the back right-hand corner under like a archway of greenery. And I thought to myself, maybe those are Snow's parents, because we don't really ever get to see where they go, what happens to them. You can assume that they are put somewhere on royal grounds. So maybe this is a royal cemetery where people that have served the king and queen or royal family lineage are kept. And in that way, as is with real life, in a lot of instances, you can usually go see them and like visit them in sort of a touristy / monument kind of way. I really like this idea. I think it brings a lot of random thoughts together in a really cohesive new location. And it's going to make sense for Ravenwood, most of all, because you do have to have a few cemeteries here. I don't know if you do have to have it for the world to function, but it's one of those things like back when I did Evergreen Harbor, my original first version of Evergreen Harbor did not include a community space, which is the lot type that comes with that world. And I always really held it in the back of my head that that was a big mistake, but I couldn't work out how to do it and what to bring in. And now going forward with the Disney save, it's something that I really try to make sure that I do. If we get a new lot type, it probably should be in the world that it comes with. I think it just makes the most sense. It isn't the only cemetery that's going to be in this world. There is actually going to be another one, but that other one will double as something else. So you'll have the option to have the two cemeteries and they will be very different vibes. I'm not going to tell you what the second one is yet because it's for a movie that I haven't announced for this world yet, but it will be a dual lot from me. So you can have it as a cemetery. You can also have it as a wedding venue. It'll make more sense later. And that's just gonna be, maybe I wanted to have like one here that's definitely for sure a cemetery. You could change this to other things. Like I think you could make this a national park potentially, but why would you? Like I think that this is such a good fit for the cemetery. There are little tributes to Snow White in general here. Like I mentioned, right in the middle, the glass coffin. That was something I had created a while ago, but we never had pillows. So I was able to come in and add the pillow in so that she could like properly have that as it was depicted in the film. I did make sure to, actually, you know what I did? I removed some of the greenery that was on this lot originally, and I changed it so the flowers match the flowers that are over on the castle lot. Specifically, like the ones that I used over on the castle grounds are now the flowers that are being used here. So they feel cohesive together, but they also, it ties into that idea that maybe this is some kind of like a royal cemetery. Of course, had to add all of the headstones. There are not actually that many, and there is a set that is like tucked in one corner. Then I also have the wishing well. You can come and do a little wish, a little offering here. Of course, that's an obvious like thing for Snow White, so I wanted to make sure I had that. And then what this lot also features is quite a bit of like busyness in terms of animals. So I think when you do think of Snow White, you probably think a little bit of music, and then you think of like her in the forest with all the animals, and maybe like cleaning the seven dwarves house with all the animals. So I've done the rabbit tree stumps that will spawn rabbits around, the little stumps that make all of the birds so that the birds fly all over the place. And then I've added some new of those like animation stickers so that we could have just liveliness and life and make it feel more a part of like the forest and like more life rather than death, where some of my other ones that I've done that's obviously like very opposite of the case. The lot itself fit pretty perfectly onto the new space, but this lot I think was a little bit longer, which meant that I could do some pathing in and out, so it's very clear like how you would sort of like traverse this lot, and then just some matching trees and greenery from the established area so that it looks good on the map and it really makes sense here. Other than that, it didn't get as many changes, and it definitely didn't need it. It was already sort of a lot that could go like almost anywhere, and when I originally built Appley Ever After, I actually had like a version 1 that I did, and I completed it, and I was like, it's going in the save file, and it sat with me I think like all weekend. I was thinking about it and just looking back on it, and I realized I hated it so much, and I was like, no, we're gonna go in and just redo it all over again. So I redid Appley Ever After. That's the version you're currently looking at, and that's the one that eventually made its way into the save and was official, and this version is significantly better than the first version. The only way you would ever see the first version, I think, is if you go way back on my Patreon. If you're a patron, you probably will see or find some works in progress of like the original one and me saying that it was done and then just coming back and being like, never mind, it's not done, I'm redoing the whole thing. So technically speaking, this is actually a refresh of the second lot. So it just like didn't need a lot of work, if that makes sense, because it's already had a ton of extra work put into it. Now, I know this is a little bit of an odd thing for me to do, and I normally don't do this, but in a few moments, the video is actually going to transition into a create a sim for Prince Florian. The reason I did that is because he's a solo townie sim. So he would have been essentially like a 7 to 8 minute clip, and I just don't like uploading things like that to YouTube anymore. I usually prefer long form content, and I even considered putting the refresh for the cottage and this and the Florian Create sim together into one video, but because I think the cottage ended up being like 35 minutes long, I was okay at least cutting that part out and putting it by itself. But I'm not okay with Prince Florian getting his own video when he just doesn't really need it, and there isn't even a ton to say about Florian, to be so honest with you. We don't know a lot about him. He doesn't have a lot of speaking lines of the film. He is one of those characters that Disney doesn't really do a whole lot with anymore either. He's not super visible in the parks. I have seen him on like rare occasions and weird event nights and things like that, or maybe a parade, maybe. But he's a rare character in the parks. He's a rare character to get any kind of merchandising off of. We don't know anything about him in terms of personality. What I decided to do with him is I really leaned into like exactly what we see and what we can potentially infer of him according to the movie, which is he possibly likes music. music, because he comes up over the wall and starts singing to Snow White. And I know that when the characters in Disney films are singing, sometimes it's one of those things where it doesn't necessarily mean that they like music. It's just a part of the storytelling process. But I felt like it would be cool to maybe lean into that a little bit. The way I designed him actually is that I decided he's going to be like a super sweet, nice boy, classic prince, which I think is what he is always intended to be. There's that whole conversation about like sometimes he is referred to in Disney media as Prince Charming. He was the original Charming, and then Cinderella came along and they also created a Prince Charming, and there's the whole like name debacle regarding them. But I think at the time what is true is that Disney was trying to create a very stereotypical prince romance character, somebody that's very like blank slate, likable. He's like almost blank slate enough that you could insert someone that you know or a celebrity or like put anybody in his position essentially. And that's maybe why they didn't go too much into his character. I also know that when the film was originally being made, they were going to do more with his character, but they had to cut the footage and the time and the money that went into everything, and Disney mortgaging his house or whatever. There was a lot that went on at that time that meant that the film could only be as long as it was, and it was very complicated. And I think that's actually also true for the prince from Sleeping Beauty, who suffers from a lot of the same issues. He doesn't have a ton of speaking lines. We don't really know a ton about him. So here's what I did. He's a nice guy, but like an actual nice guy, and I mean it. Like a sweet, charming, young, innocent prince, somebody that could potentially like meet somebody and immediately fall in love with them. That sort of like innocence of life about them. He also is a horse lover. He has a horse in the movie, and I just felt like it was something that I could like at least a little bit tie into his personality. Like maybe he just loves horses, maybe he loves nature, maybe he loves being out and like horseback riding. And I've also thought about like my other Disney prince characters that I have in the save and what types of personalities they are or what traits they have. And I don't have many horse lovers that are princes. I don't think there is any at all, except possibly Kristoff, if you count Kristoff, because I did make Sven the reindeer. He's a horse. So I think I might have made him a horse lover to like tie that over. But if you don't count Kristoff, he might be the only Disney prince that is a horse lover. So music lover, horse lover. And then I think I did brave or adventurous, whichever one comes from the Mount Komorebi pack. Reason being, why is he out in the forest by himself exploring without any type of guard, without any type of like royal party? And it might even give like Jasmine vibes where he like wants to get away from the palace. Like maybe he snuck away. We don't really know. We don't know any of that. But I did think to myself, why is this prince all by himself just like exploring the forest? And then he runs into the neighboring kingdom's castle and he climbs over the wall just because he hears somebody singing. It's like very, very adventurous, I guess. Now to talk about his clothing very quickly, very difficult situation. He does wear a dress tunic in like a blue color with a white undershirt, a red cape that you probably remember him for specifically. And then he has a fancy hat with a feather and some like, I guess I would call them like pirate style boots tucked into some form of legging-ish thing for the time that has probably a term appropriate for the time period for men, but all things we don't have. A lot of items that we don't have. So I will be looking out in the future for a pack that I can come back and update him a little bit. I ultimately decided that what I wanted to do, and I played around with a lot of different outfits, and I think it gets like weird in the video for a second. You're like, what are you doing? I liked the red with him, and I feel like when you think of him, you might associate red because you think of the red cape. So I did the red Ravenwood vest top with the white button-up shirt so that you have some of the similar features from how he looks in the movie. Blue bottoms, same exact shoes that he actually does have in the film. And then he has some like mix and match variations of all the colors and all the outfits that I was trying, but I did decide on the Ravenwood heavy look. And then there's options with hats or options without the hat, depending on which you prefer. So I hope you guys like him. I know that was definitely a quick one for Florian, and I believe I ended up calling him Heinrich is his name, or I had found that from some other media, so I did like that. So I believe it's Heinrich Florian, but I might be saying the first name wrong. I do apologize if that's the case. That is the end for Appley Ever After and Prince Florian today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know all of your thoughts, of course, down below. Stay tuned for more Snow White things. We've got one more video coming out sooner, hopefully, rather than later. Thank you guys all so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.